Good evening. Welcome to the June 27th, 2023 Development Review Commission hearing. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including, but not limited to, all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interests of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved of a final decision by the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to the City Council are not final decisions, and that's what we'll be doing tonight with our one advertised item on our agenda. Making a recommendation to the City Council, not a final decision. Roll call. With us today from the Commission, I have, starting from my far left, Commissioners Joe Forte, Linda Spears, Barbara Lloyd. I'm Chairman Mike DiDomenico. To my right, Vice Chair Andrew Johnson, Commissioners Don Cassano and Michelle Schwartz. With us today from staff, we have Director Jeff Tamulevich, Ryan LeBake, Maylin Pankowitz, Ambika Adhikari, Jacob Payne, Brenda Clark, Joanna Berry, and running AV tonight, Jason Wolf. You notice we have microphones set up here. Any comments that we'll be taking onto the record need to be made at the microphone and the podium here. We can't take commentary from your seat, so you'll have to walk up to the podium so that we can get you on the recording. This is not being broadcast live tonight, but we are filming it and recording it, and this will be played at a later date and time, both online as well as cable channel 11. We will be joined, however, by members of the public tonight by Zoom, I believe, is our method of choice. So we may have some people who we will just hear, but we will not see, and we'll take their comments. I'm expecting that we'll probably have quite a few people who wish to be heard tonight. If that's what you wish to have happen, please fill out one of these white cards. There's some either to your left or right, and make sure that those get to staff so that they can bring them up to me so I don't miss you. And if it looks like I'm going to miss you, jump up and down, wave your hands, get my attention. We will be, because of the expected number of people who wish to comment, we will be running a timer tonight. Do we have the little light box, or are we using another method? All right, we'll do something else. But basically, you're going to get 3 minutes, give or take, to make your points. You'll start by simply stating your name and city of residence for the record. You don't need to give us your exact address. As a matter of fact, I'd encourage you not to give us your home address. And take your time, be relaxed, nothing scary. You may stick at the podium. There may be a question or two from the Commission for you. But again, tonight we are not voting. We are just taking testimony, hearing concerns, asking questions, and getting things out there so that we can continue the discussion that will be going on for the next month or two. What'll happen when you're speaking is we'll try and give you a signal when you're about 30 seconds from the end so that you can start to wrap up your comments. And we won't cut you off right in the middle, but don't abuse the system. Try and wrap up as close to 3 minutes as you possibly can. Tonight on the agenda, we have the first 4 items are simply review of minutes from previous meetings. We did not have a study session today, so we didn't get a chance to talk about these ahead of time. The first meeting minutes are the study session and regular meetings from April 11th of 2023. At that meeting, the record shows that all of us, all 7 of us, regular members were at that meeting, so we can all vote on it. Did anybody see any edits or changes to those minutes? Nope. All right, then I'll take a motion for approval of items 1 and 2.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
I
Casano.
would make a motion for approval of the Development Review Commission study session and regular meeting of 4/11/2023.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Casano, second by Vice Chair Johnson. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Items 3 and 4 deal with the minutes for the study session and regular meeting of May 9th, 2023. I was not present for that meeting. I show that Vice Chair Johnson, Commissioners Schwartz, Spears, and Forte, you four were at that meeting. Do you have any changes to the minutes? No? All right. Seeing none, I would ask for a motion.
I move for the approval of the study session and regular meeting minutes of May 9th, 2023.
And do we have a second? It's been moved by Vice Chair Johnson, and Commissioner Spears has given us a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. And abstaining, signify. Casano, Lloyd, and DiDomenico abstaining. Motion passes 4-0. I imagine that's what everyone came to hear? Yeah, okay. All right, item number 5 on our agenda, and the only other advertised item, is a general plan amendment, zoning map amendment. This is the introduction and first hearing on an update to the general plan, including its 26 elements, with one additional element proposed for climate change and extreme heat, and the 17 maps within the document for Tempe Tomorrow General Plan 2050. The applicant is the City of Tempe. And what we'll do is we will have a presentation from the city, and then we will have some questions from the commission possibly, and then we will open up our public comments section. Ambika.
Thank you so much, Chair DiDomenico, and also the commissioner members. Ambika Adhikari, Principal Planner, City of Tempe Long Range. So we have a brief presentation for you. We wanted to give you a highlight of what we have done so far, and then also give you an indication of what are the changes that we've been able to make it. Once again, like you said, today is an introductory hearing. It's basically introducing the topic. We will take comments from you, guidance from you, and any other comments. We continue to get the comments from the public, and then next month on June 25th, we'll come to you again for the vote. So basically, today we'll talk about the last 15 months of the process that we've been going to the public and getting the input in preparing the draft. And the public consultation and comments that we received after the May 5th version. The first draft was released on May 5th that you're given in advance. So there were lots of comments and inputs that we received on that one. And then we incorporated or addressed them as appropriate on a revised draft dated June 20th, which you got last week. And then we also wanted to kind of give you an indication that many of the inputs that we get are kind of sometimes conflicting. Some people want maybe a little more density, some people want less density, some people want CRA on properties, some people don't want it. So we try to make the best in terms of the balancing the goals. And we'll also talk about the next steps in the process. So once again, it's a high-level policy document, general plan, any details go into the master plan, specific plans, codes, and regulations. We do get a lot of comments because whenever there is a document in front of people, they want to have all the kind of problems what in their mind is to be resolved by that particular documents. And we keep on reminding that, no, this is like almost like a constitution. The legal provisions follow. Many of the master plans go into a lot more detail. And here you can see general plan, master plan, specific plans, codes, which are much regulatory. General plan is advisory and guiding, but it's an important document in terms of setting out the vision for the city for the coming 30 years. We like to remind that to everyone. The public shaping the plan took the last 15 months, starting from 2022 March, when the public involvement plan was adopted by the City Council. And based on that, we've been going to the public and gathering inputs. And right now, we have a draft based on all of that. And then eventually, it will go to the ballot if it's adopted. And we'll talk about that steps as we go later on. Here is hard to read, but just to give you an indication that when the public involvement plan was adopted in March 2015, the official process of development of the general plan 2050, we also call it Tempe Tomorrow because it's a vision for the future. The process began. Some of the important milestones are provided in this particular graphic, going all the way, hopefully, to the March 12, 2024 general election. Lots of meetings, hearings, main things are captured on this particular graphic. So one thing that I just wanted to, the General Plan 2040 was ratified by the voters on May 20, 2014. And the state statute does require that within 10 years, you have to adopt and get it ratified. So that's the kind of date that brings it forward. Okay, so here are some statistics as of early May on all the postcards, emails, meetings, and the different person hours of the meeting that we've been holding. Just to give you a snapshot that we have tried in good faith to reach out to the community and also get the input. And some examples are we've also gone to the places where people are. It's not only that we held the meetings, it's not only that we went to the study sessions, like we came to you on study session in May. We went to City Council for a work study session on April 27th. We had many other meetings with the community working group and technical advisory groups, which I'll very briefly touch upon. But we also went to many places where people actually are, in terms of the neighborhood meetings, in terms of the arts and park, ASU housing fair, and so on. Then many of the inputs, when you are actually developing the plan, the inputs are a little wide-ranging and sometimes a little open-ended, or sometimes they vote on what they like, what is their priorities. So essence of the plan that you see, the way that it's written right now, a little sustainability, the climate change, affordable housing, multi-generational living, and walkability, all of those things are very common on almost every place we went to, including the school that we went to. We went to schools where like 105 people participated, the young students. So we tried to go for a diverse demographic to get the ideas. And the two official platforms were the community working group. Some members are here today. Community working group is a council, mayor and council appointed board, official board. And we had something like 16 or 17 meetings with them. We met every month here at the library. And the map on the right side shows that in the beginning, when people applied and were appointed, 26 members were appointed to represent all the zip codes and all the character areas on all the different locations. Some were residents, some were business owners, some were from ASU, and so on. Then, so that was more of an advisory and guiding committee that we met every month. But we had a technical advisory group, which was a much bigger, almost like 70 people, including staff, a representative from all 16 boards and commissions, and 6 or 7 different partners that we work with, including school board, ASU, Maricopa Association of Government, Downtown Tempe Authority, and so on. And that we made twice a month. We had several meetings with them also, so a lot of the detailed inputs have also been run by them and have been saved by them. And in addition to that, just very late after we released the first draft on May 5th, because once you do a concrete draft, then people take a look at it, people take it much more seriously, and they have much more specific questions. And we begin to realize that people wanted to provide detailed input. So after the release of the draft, on the May 17th, in this room, we had a public meeting, basically go over the draft. We put the draft here in the library and also at the city clerks. It was also online, and we gave them like 12 days to take a look at it and also explain and get the initial basic comments on the draft. So that started on May 17th. Then we came to you on May 23rd. Then we went to several neighborhoods because many of the neighborhoods were interested in getting into the details of what was happening close to their neighborhoods. So here is a list of some of the neighborhood meetings that we went to since the release of the draft. And today is the first hearing at the DRC, but prior to that, we've gone to many different neighborhoods. They were very well attended. As a matter of fact, one meeting here a couple of weeks ago on June 14th, I think we had 100 people in attendance. So meetings were very well attended, and people are very passionate. So I want to give you a very quick highlight on what is in the draft plan so that you are up to date on what the plan is. The plan actually starts with a native land acknowledgement statement that has been adopted and approved by the City Council. And it has 7 chapters. For the ease of reading, they've been agglomerated in 7 different chapters: introduction, land use, economic development, circulation, and so on. And it includes 20 elements for the size of our city that the Arizona state mandates that we actually have those elements in the general plan. Things like land use, economic development, things like water conservation, those things are kind of required. But City of Tempe also values a little more on some other things. So we have 6 optional additional elements. Whatever is state mandated, you can always add what you like. So we have historic preservation element, for example. We have the new element, extreme heat and climate change, something that's very important to us. So there are 6 additional elements in the document. So the document is big by the nature of it because it's a very large plan, about 388 pages, and it has to be very comprehensive. In many places, it's called comprehensive plan. We call it a general plan in Arizona, but many other cities call it comprehensive plan. It's a very guiding document, and it's large because it has to cover all the way from PIRE to public facilities to conservation to land use to densities to economic development to historic preservations and everything. So those are just a couple pages. Every element is only a few pages. It starts with a preamble, gives you an introduction, what was in the 2040. It has goals, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 different goals on the high level. And then below the goals, to support the goals, are objectives and strategies by number. And this time we have paginated all the document consecutively, so it's much easier to refer compared to 2040. Now, this plan is basically based on 2040. It's an incremental development. And in the last 10 years, many things have happened. We have urban forestry master plan. We have affordable housing strategy. We have facilities master plan. We have climate action plan. So many things have happened. And so many other planning things have happened, like drone and micro-mobility, lots of other things that have come into being. So it is updated to reflect all of the things that are already there, and also what people think, what people like, what are some of the things that people have provided input. So here are some of the highlights. You had looked at the May 5th document in detail, and this June 20th document that you have, you got it last week. And I wanted to quickly give you a highlight. What are some of the changes that we got on May 5th document to the June 20th document? We listened deeply. We had a deep listening session. People spoke very passionately. And based on that, it is sometimes difficult because we hear conflicting ideas. Some people like more compactness and sustainability. Some people like less density. So all of that, we had to kind of try to come to a balance. And sometimes it's hard because when we talk to one group of people, they push back on certain things and say, hey, you're increasing density. But we also have people who like a little more density because that creates opportunities for more housing, affordable housing, construction, jobs, and we have ASU, and we are also at the crossroads of a 5 million strong metro. So all of that sometimes we got to remind when you say that, you know, we are not alone, we are part of the whole fabric in the metro. Some of the things that we did between May 5th and the June 20th by listening to people is strengthen the bike-related strategies, added some more public health. We defined a lot more ideas and words. And then also there is language on the awareness and education about transit. There was some confusion about the land use hub idea that have been explained. There's also a couple pages that have been added as a downtown historic code core. That idea came from the urban core master plan that was done in 2017, 18, 19. But the historic preservation community, Stu Cipher and other people, Karen Gritlis, all of that, they told us that maybe downtown historic core is something that in the high level we can include here. Again, many of the details go into the historic preservation plan, or maybe later on when there's a downtown historic core master plan, it will have a lot more details in terms of the design guidelines and so on. We were asked to include some of those design guidelines. We kept it on the high level by the nature of the document. So we've added that. Similarly, the goals are added for that. Population and employment growth projection has been expanded and updated based on the MAC data. And then there was a lot of people did not like the central temporary growth area, the economic development area, element along rural areas. We took that out. We took it out from the map. We also took it out from the text. We actually got some emails and some letters asking us to reinstate that because that actually helps sustainability. So, you know, it's a balancing act. Being a planner is not always easy. So we try to give you all those different perspectives so that you can make an informed decision. Some people do want that growth area back, but we took it out because it was actually not a land use map. It was just an idea about investing some on economic development and the job strategy. So we took it out. The initial map with a little bit of a higher density and compactness actually had come from 3 scenarios that we had presented to the people. Initially, we presented 3 scenarios of the land use map. One was a little mild, the other one is moderate, the third one is a little higher density. 70% of the people on the survey actually voted for the higher density. That's how we had begun the May 5th draft. It had come from a public input. Now we have scaled back because now people have given us much more specific ideas on why we should bring it down to many, many areas. So we've done that, something on aviation, something on water resources. Again, people had questions about the growth pattern and the projection and what happens to the water supply. We checked and double checked with the water engineers. It's something like when you want to fly, you got to depend on the pilot. So we depend on the people who actually know what they're talking about. Our water situation is good. Actually, our water situation will be more than even the projected growth in 2050 because of conservation, because only 7% of our actual water resources come from Colorado River. So we are generally in good shape. And also, anytime we give a building permit, 100-year water supply assurance has to be given. There are also language on dog parks. Then there are people wanted us to strengthen the sustainability and extreme heat language, which we did. But again, we explained to many people that we cannot really make it regulatory. It still has to be promote, encourage, and sometimes implement. General plan language has to be flexible enough so that when you go downstream plan, like the master plan or a specific plan, you can go into a little more detail. And it also gives you a flexibility because that is the time that you hear more from the people go into much more specific areas like the park master plan or whatever. So those are some of the things that we have done. And one suggestion that had come to us was, again, for 10 years, there should be something like a citizen advisory group, either a new one or maybe that kind of scope could be given to an existing board to monitor and facilitate the implementation of the general plan. So that idea also has been incorporated into the language. Then let's see, other important things were many places where we had proposed mixed use and a little higher density, up to 45 dwelling units per acre along Southern and Broadway and rural. The community actually didn't want that. We thought planning-wise it was appropriate, but we have taken that out and put it back as the commercial as it is in 2040. So in commercial with a use permit, you can go up to 25 dwelling units per acre, so you can still have some residential. So in many of the areas in the, on the south side, we have scaled back the density, but there are some places where density is more appropriate, like downtown and transit corridors. There's also a lot of investment that the city and the government have made on the ridership of the transit. So those things are important. And we have the largest university in the country by student population right here. And there's a demand and there's a development. We wanted to guide those things in the proper places so that the neighborhoods are protected. Any single-family neighborhoods, we don't touch it. They are protected with a lot of things, with transitions. And there is the cultural resources area, which actually freezes the density on when it was in 2003. And if there's a new cultural resources area, it freezes the density if it gets adopted now. And those things have also been expanded to a few places like Wilson Art and Garden, part of the Mitchell Park, Brentwood Camellia, Broadmoor, Date Palm Manor. All of these people ask, and people continue to ask. Again, this is also a tricky area because there are some people, property owners, who don't want CRA in their property, like on Mill and also on the university, because sometimes they can't build, and sometimes it brings down the property values. So it's a balancing act, but by and large, close to established and well-maintained single-family neighborhoods, we try to do as much as possible, professionally speaking. And so there's an ongoing review. People have asked for a new designation, mixed use up to 25 dwelling unit per acre. That's something that we continue to review and see where it can possibly go, and it's something that we can definitely do. Okay, so we continue to receive the input. The input that haven't been reflected in the June 20 document. Just wanted to give you a highlight, and we get it by the day. We even get it on the weekend. Sometimes we get email at 2 a.m., so it continues to come in. So some people are asking us to provide high density and mixed use in some locations to promote compact development. We also heard from the Sustainability Commission, they do want to maintain mixed use and densities because sustainability and smart growth basically mean that you got to have a mixed use and then also have slightly higher density. And then expanding of the CRA area to older neighborhoods, we continue to hear that. Remove CRA and the Mill and University arena that we've heard from some of the owners. They feel very strongly about their property, which are partly either commercial already or they are just adjoining commercial. We've heard that we need to strengthen sustainability-related language even more, which we can do, but again, it has to be general plan language. Many people have asked us to reduce density in Daniel Plaza. We will throw that to you and the public, and whatever guidance you give us, we'll continue to work on that. We also got comments on lowering the Gentilly neighborhood back to low moderate multifamily density. That the staff feels pretty comfortable with that. And some people have asked us to keep the Central Tempe growth area, but overwhelming people have told us not to keep it. So, we just wanted to show it to you that we hear different things. And then also emphasizing the protection of the desert environment is something that we've been hearing from people. Jacob, if you can give a very quick highlight on the map that we changed since May 5th to June 20th.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Commission. Jacob Payne, Senior Planner. So as Ambika mentioned, and as you know very well, is that one of the elements of a general plan, and often one of the ones that's most discussed, is the land use element. So part of that element is the map where you're going over land uses and projected densities. So just as a reminder, land use on a general plan and zoning are not one and the same, and they often don't correspond and don't necessarily need to correspond with one another. What land use on a general plan is depicting is an expectation or a desire for a land use to occur over the next 30 years as a gradual shift just to anticipate projected growth or employment opportunities or ways to focus on neighborhood enhancement. So just to double down on that and get like a couple things clear for everybody is that the land use and density in the general plan, those are the only two aspects that it's talking about. It doesn't deal with height of projects, parking ratios, open space requirements. We're just looking at the land use and the density. So in the 2040 general plan, we had two maps that accomplished this. There was the land use and the residential density map. We're proposing to combine them into one map, and doing so is convention with other cities in the valley. So by doing that, we had to come up with a new legend for this map. So what you're seeing here is the categories that we're going to be using on the land use and residential density map. So those first 5 categories are known as the residential ones. So as Ambika explained, there's cultural resource, which has the effect of limiting density to what is currently allowed by zoning. Then there are 2 single-family categories that have a distinction as to units per acre. So there's one that's large lot, 3 units per acre. And then there's the traditional single-family, 9 units per acre. And then there are 2 multifamily categories, which are cut at 25 units per acre and 45 units per acre. Then we have the 5 mixed-use categories. There's the moderate, which is 45 units, the high at 65, and then the urban, which is following from the urban core density and the 2040 plan that doesn't have a density cap, and it's negotiated at the time of a project submittal. And then there are the 2 industrial mixed-use categories, which are also being carried over from the 2040 plan. Those categories were created with the general plan amendment for the Maker District and the Smith Innovation Hub. So that's mixed use with incorporation of perhaps light industrial users, or maybe like an artisan type business. So there's 2 of those, the 25 units and the 45 units per acre. And then the remainder are the land uses following directly from what was in the 2040 plan: industrial, commercial, civic, educational, and then the open space and recreational categories. So since the May 5th draft release, as Ambika mentioned, we've been hearing and having public meetings and making amendments to this map. So the focus in general for the enhancement of density and addition of mixed use in the city was to focus on transit corridors along the streetcar, along the light rail, areas along arterial roads where maybe aging commercial shopping centers might exist, where there's opportunity for redevelopment. And additionally, at our regional commercial areas, Arizona Mills and the Emerald Center. So as Ambika mentioned in the previous slides, some of the changes that we had made from the May 5th draft to the map that you see in the June 20th draft is to scale back some of the mixed use and some of the higher densities that we had proposed along particularly Southern Avenue and Rural and Baseline, as well as the intersections of Baseline and McClintock and Guadalupe and Rural. So in addition to those changes, we're also designating several neighborhoods as cultural resource area, so limiting the density to what's allowed by the zoning. So those neighborhoods, as Ambika mentioned, were the Mitchell Park, the Wilson Art and Garden, the Broadmoor, the Brentwood Cavalier, and then several smaller neighborhoods in the general parts of Maple Ash, and then several smaller neighborhoods generally in the vicinity of Mill and Broadway. And then there's a version of this map which has been available online since the publishing of the May 5th draft and was updated with the June 20 draft, that's showing those changes as they relate to the 2040 plan through hatching, just to make some clarity about particularly what areas are experiencing a proposed density increase or a land use increase, or a land use change, or have both being proposed at the site. So with that, I'll give it back over to Ambika.
Thank you, Jacob. So Jacob Payne has been furiously making maps. He's even made the maps on the character area level, which are also online, so people can actually take a look at their own neighborhood in a lot more detail. Citywide sometimes is a little difficult. What he emphasized is sometimes, there's a miscommunication and misperception. City cannot change anybody's zoning. General plan doesn't change any zoning. General plan doesn't go to a site-specific area. It's a vision for the coming 30 years. It will continue to be updated in between also. Like between 2014, when the 2040 general plan was adopted and ratified, and now we had 33 amendments in the general plan. So, it's not set in stone. People do amend it, and every 10 years it will be updated. It's a vision for another 30 years. And I would like to make that point that it doesn't change zoning. It's a vision. It's a long term. In terms of the next steps, so today we are just to make it easy for everyone and is also required for the hearing. This is kind of south side of the city. We have the first introductory meeting where you contemplate and you hear everything. And then July 25th would be the north meeting where you would vote. What we will do is between now and then, we continue to get the input. There's actually a comment box online. People have been filling it. I think we got something 20 already. And people can continue to give us input, and we will try to address them in a balanced manner, because sometimes people give us like specific language and edit on red line, do this, you must do it. It's hard because we get different languages from 20 different people and can't do it. So give us your ideas and we try to accommodate as much as we can do, listening to everyone and coming to a balanced perspective. As you can see how much we have already made the changes within the month just to listen to everyone. So for the July 25th meeting, 1 week prior to that, Chair and Commissioner members, you will get a copy of the revised draft again with all the other input and advice that you give us today. And then we go to the council on August 10th and 24th. And if everything goes well, it is scheduled to go to the ratification vote on March 12th to save money to the city because that's the general election time. We need to get it ratified by May anyway because of the state statute and that 10-year window, and also because there needs to be 180 days between notifying for the election. That's the kind of agreement that the city has with the county. So that 180 days is counted to have that August 24th date because some people have asked us to push it, delay it. It doesn't, anytime, even if you delay it, it's the last month that actually counts. And we've been working on it and, several months, even after the draft has been released, people have a lot of opportunities to comment, and we'll continue to get the comments all the time, input all the time until the adoption. Also wanted to remind the chair and the commission members that 2040 ratification and adoption was also same timeline. The draft was released in July, and it was adopted by the council in December. So it's the same kind of timeline and window that we had, and the vote was in May. So we have done as good as we can do in terms of giving time to do everything, and we listen. Here is the name of some of the staff that we're here, but many of us are here. If there are any questions to the staff, or it's up to the chair. Thank you so much, Chair and the commission members.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the commission or staff at this point? No? All right. We're going to then call for public comment. I have staff, I'm not sure, I'd like to, we have one person who's requested to speak online. Are we in a position that we can bring that person into the meeting now?
Yes, hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
My name is David Sokolowski, and I live in Tempe. Tempe is landlocked, and we can't continue to build low density. I think it's going to be extremely difficult to get 25 units per acre to pencil without increasing the cost of housing. The city plans to add 83,000 jobs, and some people have said those workers should live somewhere else. I can't find the city somewhere else, but if it did exist, the residents would be outraged that we plan to increase traffic in their neighborhoods. This supply and demand imbalance will inflate housing costs even more. Tempe residents will have to pay a premium in housing costs to avoid commuting each day. Our city needs to build at least 18,000 affordable units, not counting inflation. The difference between 25 units per acre and 45 units is the difference between 800 acres or 400. Which option is more likely to protect Tempe's neighborhoods? Every meeting starts by explaining this commission provides recommendations considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. When we talk about general welfare, 70% of our city will be renters by 2030, and we have more people cost-burdened by rent than homeowners. But renters are not being fully represented. Are there any renters on the DRC? The central Tempe growth area was removed, the density on Southern and Baseline was removed, the cultural resource area was expanded. This plan needs to include a balanced approach with options for renters and opportunities for affordable housing. That doesn't mean build everything in the Apache area, or that the Apache area is the only neighborhood that has affordable housing. If Tempe had inclusionary zoning, our city would need to create at least 100,000 units. It's nearly impossible for Tempe to build 25 units per acre and solve the housing crisis. We can talk about shadows and concrete jungles, but wait until homelessness and poverty spirals out of control. Poverty in the USA reduces life expectancy by up to 15 years. I'm less concerned about noise or shadows because people are fighting for their lives. Adequate housing was recognized as part of the right to an adequate standard of living in Article 25 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right to adequate housing includes participation in housing-related decision-making at the national and community levels, the right to choose one's residence, to determine where to live, and the freedom of movement. Housing is not adequate if its cost threatens or compromises occupants' enjoyment Housing is not adequate, it is cut off from employment opportunities, healthcare services, schools, childcare centers, and other social facilities, or is located in polluted or dangerous areas. Thank you.
Mr. Sokolowski, thank you very much for joining us. I will now call my next card, and I'm going to kind of go in the general order that they were turned in. Next up, Carol Stewart. And Janalyn Granizzo, you'll be next.
Okay. My name is Carol Stewart, and I was a resident here for a while in Tempe. My biggest issue that I want to discuss, there are four. One is water. We are running out of water. That is a reality, and that is something that you seriously have to deal with if you're considering building houses, the college, and everything else. There won't be any water for the little one that is sitting here. So I think that that should be the number one priority. The second is the housing. There is no rent control here in Tempe. Some people have had their rents raised $500, 20%, 40%. This is ridiculous. Young people that are coming out of college or moving here to start a family can't afford to live in Tempe. And old people, we have to move. It is simply prohibited. We cannot stay. So again, you do have a plan to have multi-dwellings and low-income housing. And one of the issues I had at the last meeting, and then I'll finish with that, was that they gave the median income $70,000. Most people don't remember math, but what we really need to look at is either the mode or the mean. What is the real average income of the people in Tempe? It is not $70,000. And if the rents are based on $70,000, you will have a ghost town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I'm just, for tonight's meeting, rather than stop and ask for questions after each speaker, just holler at me, get my attention if you have something specific. Otherwise, I'll just keep moving. All right. Janalyn?
Janalyn Granillo.
Granillo.
Looks like granola, but it's not. Okay.
City of residence.
I live in Meyer Park neighborhood and have been there for over 30 years. I've been a neighborhood chair, and I'm currently the co-chair, and I'm a commissioner on 2050. I want to briefly note my vote was not to advance to the DRC because when the draft proposed changes were given to us, we didn't have a paper copy. You know, we did have the land use, but we didn't have the actual draft in front of us. So the ink was entirely too wet to say, yeah, I'm going to advance this without looking at it. With that said, the new draft was June 20th. We're now at June 27. That's not a whole lot of time for people to have been commenting. I have both comments and questions. I'd kind of like to know how many new responses we've had to the new draft from 6/20. From the community meetings I've gone to, most of the concern or the rub has been for the land use, and the staff has responded extremely quickly to the comments and the changes, and a lot of the changes that are on the new map I think are very good. I am concerned about the neighborhoods and increased density and maintaining character areas. Also to note that increasing density, as many people want to do, does not guarantee affordability. It simply does not. I think there's other ideas and solutions that do not harm existing neighborhoods, and that's probably not for the 2050 Commission or for the DRC Commission here, but I think there are other solutions that are out there. From the community meetings I attended, again, land use was the rub. The staff has been very responsive in doing changes, and they have been for the better. The narrative on the 2050 is good, if I say so myself. As a retired public health professional, I really like the narrative addressing and pertaining to that with climate change and community health. And finally, I think it's important before our final vote to step up the community education. Again, the last draft was June 20th. We're now at June 27. and to encourage, I don't know if that's in your purview or not, the education so that people know what it is that they're voting on. For my neighborhood that I live in the Alameda character area, and I'd like for that neighborhood to be protected as well as from encroachment. So thank you very much. The staff has been good. I will say that, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Staff, if, just as we go, take notes if there's specific direct questions on the process, number of comments we've received since the June 20th draft, and then we'll hit everybody's questions kind of at the end. Save a little bit of the back and forth. All right, I'm going to take a chance here. Robert Moore. Do we have a Robert Moore? Yes, we do. Good work.
Sorry for my poor writing.
That's all right.
It's always cryptic. I can understand it, but you know. So yeah, Robert Moore, Tempe, Arizona. I'm going to read this because I don't trust myself. Many here are providing feedback on the plan's content, but I wanted to touch base on the process. First of all, I wanted to thank staff for all their effort invested in putting together this massive document and the countless hours engaging with the community within this process. We can never truly appreciate the stress, creativity, diligence, and tenacity that is required by staff behind the scenes to make this possible. I was able to serve on the 2050 Community Working Group this past year, and I'm sure you know that our final vote was 9-6 to advance the plan draft to the DRC at our last meeting, and that there were numerous public speakers and comment cards raising concerns about the proposed density and land use adjustments, along with the effectiveness of the city's community engagement and survey data employed during the 2050 general plan process to that point. From my understanding, many of these same issues were raised during the technical advisory group sessions as well. With this in mind, I sincerely hope that DRC lends the 2050 team your encouragement and support in its continuing community outreach efforts and seeking input from the broader community, and in particular marginalized demographics that might have not been well represented within the process. We still have quite a bit of work to do as a community on this project, and staff needs to be given the time, space, resources, and opportunity to achieve an effective, inclusive, and equitable result. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this one I know. Phil Amorosi. You'll get 2 minutes. Shannon Dutton, you're up next.
Phil Amorosi, Tempe, and I represented the DRC on the TAG committee. So I thought staff did a great job, and but of course I also would like to see a few tweaks. I was the one that brought up the density issue in the Gentilly neighborhood because that's a small neighborhood that butts up to the railroad tracks. It's already zoned for 25 units an acre, and the only way in and out is Spence, which is not a major road. Their side streets aren't even regular street width, and there's also school buses and city buses that go down Spence already. So to increase that to 45 units would be insane. So let's keep that at the low to moderate and not change that. When I heard that the staff predicted that there would be 71,000 new residents by 2050, I saw the land use plan, the original land use plan, and I was glad to see that they spread it out throughout the city because not everybody wants to live in North Tempe. So I'm one of the few that was disappointed that they took out the mixed use zoning and put back the commercial because a lot of those single-story commercial strip malls along Southern and Baseline don't serve a proper purpose for their use. You could get a lot more people in with a mixed-use zoning rather than just the commercial zoning. One of the big things at the TAG meetings, to a member, even the esteemed Dave Fackler thought that the sections that had to do with conservation and climate change and extreme heat elements, all those were rather weak when it came to projecting Tempe as a sustainable city. Staff used a lot of adjectives like, let's consider adopting, let's encourage use. Let's promote efficiency. And we shouldn't have those adjectives. It just should be, the plan should be, at this point in time, when you're hearing all the science about climate change, and other cities have passed green codes and sustainability codes, that the city's plan also needs to just say, let's adopt these, let's use these, let's implement these, let's boost these things. And I could send you specific instances. It seems like they're pretty direct when it comes to municipal building codes and municipal vehicles, but when it comes to the private sector, where most of our development's going to be, they give the developers a loophole, so they don't have to do any of this stuff. And I think that needs to be stronger. Maybe if the city council could adapt the green codes ahead of this plan, like other cities have, then we could solve a lot of these issues, because the developers would have to follow the code. One last thing, regional parks. The Tempe Town Lake is a regional park that ends at Hardy. We should extend that regional park all the way to Priest. We don't have to extend it from the lake to Rio Salado, but there should be a green path over there. Besides the walking path, the bike path, you need a green path. And then you could develop along Priest and Rio Salado, but at least you also extend the regional park. When you have more density, you need more open space. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Shannon Dutton.
I don't know if you were given the maps. I asked for a map to be given out. So, because it was kind of hard, I put my comments online, but I couldn't do an attachment. So, Embiid and Jacob were kind enough to let me forward that to them, so it could make a little bit more sense. My name's Shannon Dutton. I'm a resident of a neighborhood north of the Tempe Town Lake. I've lived here all my life. My mother lived here all her life. There's in the 2050 plan, if you see item number 1, that is in yellow, and that is traditional single-family, 9 dwellings per acre. The areas that are noted with a 4, all those areas were also designated the same. 2050 plan came out, and now they are getting afforded a cultural resource area. I'd like my area to be cultural resource also, and get the benefits of that designation the same. That's why I'm here. Also, too, item number 2, they've taken that to 45 dwellings per acre. That from sidewalk of the residents in yellow to that area is 40 feet. That's an incorrect density for the residents in all that area, especially when you've taken the rest of the residents and you've changed those to cultural resource areas. So I'd like to see that reduced a little bit, because that's high density. About 15 years ago, we did a traffic study. Just in the morning down Fillmore Street was 1,500 cars. So this density has got to kind of come to some kind of a level where we can continue to live in our neighborhoods. I've lived there for 36 years. Most residents have lived there 30 years. There's new neighbors coming in. We have elementary school, we have newborns, and like that neighborhood to still kind of stay that way for them. That's kind of my wish, to keep my area as the same as the others were designated as far as cultural resource. Also, too, in 2050, I intend on still being in my house. I have longevity in my family, 97, 103, so really I'm not complaining except for myself, I guess. At this point in time, I'd like to have my house be the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jack Ketchen.
Hi there, my name is Jack Ketchum. I live in Tempe. I guess I just wanted to address the housing and circulation elements of the plan, and kind of address some of the concerns that I think other people have been raising. I think that it's unfortunate that the multi-use areas have been rolled back in the plan. I think that along these arterials, what we have there right now is just lots of parking lots and strip malls and those things, like other people have said, could be put to better use and have housing built in with them. And then I guess I also just want to bring up a point that more people commute into Tempe to work than live here. We have more people that work here than are able to live here, and as a result, that naturally brings a lot of people having to drive into Tempe, usually in single occupancy vehicles. Whereas if we were to build more housing, we could actually fit more of those people within Tempe, and then along with the 20-minute city goals, once we get those people in Tempe, we'd be more likely to be able to get them to, maybe ride a bike or ride a scooter or hop on the Orbit or any of our other transportation modes that we have in the city. And that's another big point too, is, a lot of these future developments, the goal is specifically to not increase the car traffic when they are built. That's why they're being proposed as mixed use. That's why they're being proposed along arterial roads, where we already have transit facilities and where we're going to be investing more in our transit facilities. And we already have the highest per capita cycling trips in the whole valley. We have some of the highest ridership light rail stations in the valley around ASU. We have a generally young population around ASU that is a target audience for a lot of our active transportation modes of getting around the city. So when we talk about adding mixed use and increasing the density, I don't think it has to come at the cost of, oh no, we're gonna have all this traffic, right? That's specifically in the plan called out to be, something that they're very aware of in preventing that. I just want to say I support the plan. I'd love to see the mixed use elements added back in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sean Swisher. And Till on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Swisher. I live in the Daly Park neighborhood. I'm here tonight as a member of Tempe Sustainability and Resilience Commission and as a representative of the Technical Advisory Group to the General Plan. Earlier today, our commission authored a letter to state our concerns regarding the most recent draft of the General Plan, which I'd like to outline further here. Our first concern centers on the clarity of the language used regarding sustainability policies. Though the plan excels at building a broad framework for sustainability strategies to be implemented across essentially every element and chapter in the plan, it lacks specificity and commitment to action. We feel that the language of the plan must be resolute in meeting the goals of Tempe's Climate Action Plan. And while we recognize the flexibility required of such a wide-reaching planning document, we must still have direct avenues for implementing sustainability policy and tracking compliance with each new development that follows. However, of larger concern is the loss of available housing density, mixed-use development, and focused growth areas seen in the June 20th draft of the General Plan. These changes will harm our ability to meet our carbon emissions reduction goals and create a more resilient, welcoming city. In the coming years, one of the major challenges Tempe will face is equitably meeting the needs of our landlocked city's projected growing population. To grow sustainably and continue to improve the quality of life for Tempeans will require us to embrace higher density, mixed use, and transit-oriented developments while simultaneously reinforcing the character of our neighborhoods. We're discouraged that the most recent draft endangers our ability to meet our climate action goals by displacing so many opportunities for more affordable housing, more walkable neighborhoods, and drastically improved access to transit and essential services. Areas such as Donnell Plaza, along Broadway at Dorsey and Price Road, and again at Rio Salado and Priest, these are areas that can be developed in ways that give back far more to our community than low-density commercial areas can offer. Tempe needs land use and zoning policies that enable the city to advance community priorities, like the density bonus program originally outlined in the Urban Core Master Plan Initiative. It's possible to increase our housing density through developments that are scaled appropriately and seamlessly integrate into our surrounding communities, and it is imperative that we attempt to do so. This can also be done with community oversight that ensures the general plan is implemented appropriately. Finally, To realize the resilient and sustainable future that we wish for our future generations of Tempeans, we must recommit to that effort each occasion we are afforded to shape our city. We encourage this commission and the City Council to take bold action in defense of our community's needs, to resolutely codify sustainability policies into our long-term planning documents, and to deliver on the promises of the CAP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really impressed. You've all come prepared tonight. People are using their time wisely. Ann Till, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Ann Till. I live near McClintock High School in Cella Park, and I was a member of the 2050 Commission, and I'm at Alameda Meadows Neighborhood Chair. And I also voted no to proceed based on the controversy over the land use. And before I make more comments, I just wanted to thank all the effort by planning and city staff. They did a great job and worked really hard. And so just wanted to make sure I mentioned that up front. So I hugely appreciate the pullback on the high-density corridors on Broadway and Southern. The current plan with the amended reduced density development densities should be maintained. That's not saying that I object to high density, but I object to its lack of control, and I think leaving it at a 25 acre per unit, I think it kind of would force developers to have to work harder possibly to, get the zoning up and the land use changed in the zoning up. I do let's see. I was going to say, I've noticed that when the land use changes rapidly, so does the property value, and so then the apartments cost more, maybe as much as a 25 unit if it's rapid. Let's see. Then I wanted to talk about the Alameda Character Area Plan states as its framework that the preservation of Alameda's core mid-century post-war neighborhoods is the central placemaking and planning goal to balance future growth. So the homes in those areas are very important. And in my own single-family neighborhood, there are already 2 homes boarded up, 1 halfway demolished, that making our neighborhood distressed. They're waiting for rezoning, I think. It looks pretty clear. They've been that way 2 years. So as identified in the character area plan, most of Alameda areas are mid-century post-war neighborhoods, and to protect from the impacts of the underlying zoning district changes, and that impact's already evidenced by these boarded up houses. We'd like to see more of the rest of the character area designated as cultural resource to protect the zoning on some of the single family homes, especially in the Cella and Meyer areas. Broadway has a higher density zone. So I'm asking, don't wait, because do it in the 2050 general plan before neighborhoods become negatively impacted by distressed vacated homes waiting for rezoning, like I think we saw north of the railway. And the other part of the Alameda character area was the transitions between single-family and multi-family mixed use must be thoroughly conceived and well-designed. And for this to happen, I think residents need more of a voice early in the conceptual phase, not late in the process with the postcard. And I would love to see a separate resident committee, to oversee the 2050 plan implementation. So I think.
Mr. Chair, we have an alarm going off at 3 minutes.
Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
I thought
So
it was at 2.5.
just for the public that is here and for the, fairness of everyone, so everyone can get to speak, our alarm would go off at 3 minutes. If
At
you
3.
want me to take it 2.5, that's okay too.
Okay.
At
Yeah.
3 minutes, and you can I'll keep an eye, and whoever's keeping the alarm, you can just wave at me, and then I'll give give you a signal so you can wrap things up. And not just you, but I mean,
Well,
everyone.
I thought it was at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, because
Yeah.
you said, so I thought, okay, I got 30 seconds.
There we go.
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I just thought someone forgot to turn their phone off, and I'm like, who's doing that? All right, Mr. Darcy, I think you are our next speaker. I don't think, I know it, because it's right here.
Hello. Yes, as we all know, I think back in the 50s, a lot of the apartment buildings in Tempe were either first story, 1 story, and then about maybe 60, they went to 2 stories. So in the northern part of Tempe, it's like 1 story, 2 story. Now, we're going to be changing that to 5 story to 7 story. We need to keep the 25 unit per acre, the 25 dwelling units per acre, simply because it's either on the circulator, or the orbit system, and we need to bring back the mixed use of 25. Anything from 45 to 65 is a huge incentive for these small, older apartments to be torn down, and in its place there's going to be 5, 6, 7 story, maybe 10 story buildings because of the 45, 65. Keep the 25 and maybe explore the mixed use designation for the 25 acres. That's very important. Affordable housing, that's a social issue. That's a social problem. A lot of us here, the reason why we own our homes is because of assumable mortgages that was stopped in the 80s. And if they brought back that, assumable mortgages, we wouldn't have an affordable housing problem. I guarantee you. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Karen Gitlis.
Karen Gitlis. I am 1206 South Ash, the Maple Ash neighborhood, and that is the oldest neighborhood in Tempe. Regarding the general plan, I am pleased with staff revisions to this document, especially for the preservation of our cultural resource areas. Working with development staff, we have achieved an excellent chapter on historic preservation for the plan, and I thank you very much for that. Also, the historic preservation section of the draft plan is Chapter 2. After the land use chapter, that is Chapter 1. So thank you to the community development team for that honor also, and giving us the attention that historic preservation has needed for quite a long time, like 37 years. We are currently working with staff to expand the educational component of the part of the plan, of this part of the plan, and look forward to future conversations. Thank you for including the downtown historic core in the plan. That's another thing that we have been concerned about as a historic preservation community for a long time. The loss of our genuine old-time Tempe downtown. I'm grateful to understand, I had a long conversation with Jacob today, and I'm grateful to understand that the draft general plan will continue to be revised based on public input until close to the time that it goes to the City Council for its reviews. I only found out today that the Mill and University pieces of the draft that were designated to be mixed use have been returned to their 2040 plan status as cultural resource areas. That is in my neighborhood, and I was very concerned about those blocks. I am pleased to see the neighborhood get back the limited protection of the CRA. While not a protective overlay or zoning change, the cultural resource area serves to signal that there are families living here who wish to keep the character of the city's oldest platting intact to whatever extent we can, which it's not that great at this point, but I mean, that is what it is. Okay, one more comment. I'm asking for consideration to reduce the density of the residential development at Donnell to its 2040 level of 25 units per acre. I think we could get overcrowded in that. We have not the beginnings of a plan, but that will be coming. Thank you so much for your efforts, and thanks to the development team too.
Thank you, Ms. Goodlitz. Next, Steve, and I'm not sure I'm going to get this right, Amelote? Amelote? Not close, not even close? Steve wants to talk about trees.
I'm really going to be short and brief. My name is Steve Amelot. I live at the Baseline Hardy neighborhood. A lot of things that you guys have brought up today have lit a fire in me that I'm going to go back to my neighborhood and start getting some things going, I hope. But because I was under the impression when I came here we were going to talk about climate change. When I retired from the city of Tempe 14 years ago, I was a city arborist. We need more trees. But with more trees, we need more people to take care of those trees. And I will push for whatever I can do that way. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, somebody just said we were going to have 71,000 new people here, so put them to work. Nolan Williams.
Hello, thank you. I am another one of the members of the General Plan Working Group. I was one of the majority who voted in favor of it. I was a big supporter of the plan as it was being developed. I do not like the changes that have been made to it to roll back new homes for people in these areas. I do not like the expansion of cultural resource areas, which might be better described as income exclusivity areas or cultural exclusivity areas, right? I live in one of these neighborhoods. I live in Daly Park. Let's go. Best neighborhood in the city, in my opinion. And it is not the best neighborhood in the city because all of the houses are the same height and they're all the same setback, and some of them have bricks, although ours does have brick and it looks very pretty. Our neighborhood is great because there is a variety of different designs in the neighborhood. There are people who have had Pueblo houses. There's this weird, crazy White Castle thing, a street north of me, some of you guys have seen. I don't love all the decisions they've made with that house, but I love that there is a wide variety of different designs in my neighborhood. And I love that it is close to ASU so that people like my roommates, who when I moved in were students, can go to school without driving. They can walk or they can bike. I love that it is very close to a Safeway. I love that it has good people in it. I love the neighbors that I've met. I do not care that it is low density or that it is 7 dwelling units per acre. In fact, if we are making personal requests, I would like you to take the CRA off of Daly Park if you could do it. I'm sure that I could find a number of my neighbors who are working people or who have children who do not have equity in their homes and who are renters and would love to see the ability to create more additional housing options in that neighborhood, because growing old in place should not be about the same structure or the same 4 walls, or about keeping everybody else out of your neighborhood because you think they drive cars that are ugly like mine, or you think they don't make that much money like I currently do, hopefully not forever, or that you think that they're bad, or that you don't like the way their kids look, or that their kids are too loud. I think that we need a system in this city that plans around future needs that are based on material facts rather than the feelings of, I feel imposed on that there's a tall building 3 miles from my house or half a mile from my house, not on my street, but on someone else's street. I hate seeing it. I don't want to see it. Change is bad, blah, blah, blah. Because when we look at the polling data and when we look at the survey research, the majority of people in Arizona want more housing options. They are fine with more density. They don't care about the neighborhood protections because these protections are not protecting the neighborhoods, because neighborhoods are people and institutions. The neighborhoods are protected by allowing more people to move in, by allowing families that cannot afford big expensive homes
to, move in as well in slightly smaller places that fit their needs, that allows more children to come, that allows more people to stay, rather than evicting people so that a handful of homeowners can have their equity shoot through the roof. Thank you very much.
All right, now you guys are just showing off. That was good timing. Sam Thiel.
Hey, you got my last name right. That was nice. Hi, Commission. Oh, cool. I'm close. All right. So I just wanted to come up and say every time we expand CRA, we are putting a nail in the coffin of Tempe. There is the general plan changes were terrible. Getting rid of housing, getting rid of any new development along Southern is bad. We need to be able to afford new places for new families, for college students. Someone earlier was talking about the surveys and the community outreach might not have been good enough. Well, we should talk to renters, we should talk to students. What do they want? They want to be able to live in Tempe, just like me. I graduated, I'm living here, but I might get priced out soon because we aren't building anything. We gotta build more in Tempe, and CRA is just not good for the city, so. Community resource, or cultural resource. Sorry, I'm a little adrenalined up.
2003 era zoning density and height limits.
Yeah.
20 years ago for the next 30 years.
Thank you. Mike Treacy.
Hello, I'm Mike Tracy. I'm a proud Tempe resident. I live in South Tempe, just 3 houses north of Chandler. And I'm delighted to learn about this committee, that you're forward-thinking and you have plans for Tempe. Unfortunately, I'm going to briefly talk about the past. I haven't checked my facts, but I suspect that Tempe is the only city on the surface of the planet that voted to protect a landfill. And I'm talking about the recent propositions. I rather was excited by an interesting and well thought out plan, and I was disappointed by the slanderous negativity of the opposition. And it disappointed me. I felt wounded. When I look at the recent plan, there's nothing exciting on the plan. Everything on your plan is fantastic and it's important. I'm not knocking the plan, but just something interesting and exciting that puts Tempe back on the map would appeal to me. I listened to some other comments about affordability of homes, so I'd like to add 2 quick comments. I may have zoned out, but I didn't notice any planning about homelessness. I know that in San Diego and to a large extent in Phoenix, there was a big homeless problem, and I suspect that that might grow. And I think it might be wise to think ahead, what are you going to do about the growing homeless problem, particularly with affordability of housing? Now, one final comment, my daughter, 25, she does not earn $70,000 a year. I assure everybody she is a preschool assistant teacher. It's slightly above minimum wage. She's still living at this instant with me, and that's good. I love my daughter. The only way, but I'm trying to get her launched, right? She can't live with me forever. So the plan, and this was not true when I was young, but the plan is that she got together with 3 others, and now they can afford to rent. And that's how she's getting out of the house. And I'm trying to support that. So again, I'm thrilled that your committee exists. I didn't know you existed, and I think it's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Next, Holly.
Pass.
Cross, what?
Yeah, I pass.
Oh, you're going to pass?
Yeah.
Okay.
The comments I have been said.
Okay. Would you wish me to read these?
No.
Okay. Christina Wirtz.
The comments I had, some of them one of them I had already
Can
been
you
said
start
before.
with just name and
Hi,
city of
Christina
residence?
Wirtz, Tempe, South Tempe. One of the questions I had, comments I had been already said before another meeting. The one I had was about affordability of building material, and would that affect the overall cost of the house? Would you think about that, perhaps more in a general language version of that? Because I know the cost of the building materials very often affects the cost of purchasing the house or renting the house. So if we use cheaper materials, that may affect over time, but that may also affect safety as well. So sort of balance that as well. That's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Stephen Gerner. Andrew Miller on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Gerner. I'm president of Tempe Bicycle Action Group. I also own 2 small businesses, Swears Bakery and Buttered Up Bakery, and I'm a homeowner in North Tempe 85281 Farmers Arts District. First off, as part of Tempe Bicycle Action Group, we just wanted to say we are fully supportive of the additional language around cycling, active transportation, and pedestrian access. Fantastic work with the circulation plan, and we're super grateful for planning and neighborhood services for all the work marathon, epic hours of work that you've done reaching out and making this happen. However, like most other people here, I'd like to address the land use issue. MAG projects 71,000 new residents. That's not a random number that they made up. 71,000 people is the demand that they're expecting by 2050 here in Tempe. The new plan sets that at 20,000. We're going to say we're going to accommodate 20,000 people. But what do we do with those extra 50,000 people? It just drives up costs for everything. And as a business owner, we deserve to be able to have a place where our employees can also live. Hey, I don't pay any of my employees under $20 an hour, but barely any of my employees can afford to live in Tempe. We already have a housing crisis. We don't have affordable housing options, and the only way out of this is to provide additional housing. So I'm very disappointed to see that the area, like basically all of the commercial areas that were gonna be mixed use are now back to commercial. We can't shove everyone in North Tempe. I live in North Tempe, I love it. I welcome more people, I love more density there, but we only have so much space, and we need to spread that out across the city, and we need options for 50,000 more people that we expect want to live in Tempe in the next 30 years. As far as a homeowner, we deserve lower taxes and we deserve better services. Increased housing density lowers our individual tax rates, and it allows for the city, police, fire, every city service you can imagine. Having that increased density allows us to provide better services. And in terms of Tempe Bicycle Action Group, we want to see increased density. It allows us to create more connected infrastructure so that we have options that aren't just for single car use. We only have so much street space, right? But if we have increased density, it supports better public transportation. It supports better paths because we can afford to introduce that extra infrastructure into the city. So ultimately, we know 71,000 people want to move here. We have to do something about it. Decreasing, we have a ton of different areas that are underutilized, a lot of commercial areas that are underutilized, and I'm really disappointed to see that pullback. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Commissioner. Andrew Miller. I live in City of Tempe. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at a software and manufacturing company, and we hire a lot of people, mostly young men, to work in our warehouse. And I'm here because I was excited about them having more options to live within the City of Tempe, and I'm disappointed to see that some of those options are coming off the table. I've got employees, we can start with someone we'll call Kyle. And instead of living in Tempe and having a short commute, he does about 50 road miles every day, increasing traffic, and spends an extra 90 minutes a day that he should be spending with his kid and with his wife. And he should be a proud citizen of Tempe and City's Queen Creek. That doesn't need to happen. Another one, let's call him Travis, way out in West Phoenix. And again, it's a supply issue. I want all my guys in town. I want them all to have an hour back of their day. Instead they're commuting. I would like them to all have more spending money and not having to spend money on cars and commute. And I'm just disappointed to see such long commutes. I'm happy they're there. They're great guys. I'm not going to fire them. But I wish it were a little different for them. And that's all I came here to say.
Mr. Miller, thank you very much. Roberta Miller.
Thank you, members of the DRC. I appreciate being here today. My name is Roberta Neal Miller. I am a member, a resident of the Brentwood Cavalier Neighborhood Association. I'm also the chair of the Neighborhood Association. I've lived in Tempe for 30 years. I've been very involved in this process, kind of from the beginning. I have actually something that I want to read. It's actually was authored by Marie Provine, who is my one of my neighbors and very good friends. She's also a former professor at ASU, she's chair of the Justice Studies Department. I agree with what she read, and it's what she wrote, and it's more eloquent than what I prepared for you, so I'm simply going to read this. I'm grateful for the hard work that went into this plan and for the city's willingness to make resident-requested changes in many instances. Developing a plan for a growing city and bringing the residents here into the process is a huge and challenging project. I think that much of the plan, as it has evolved, is on the right track. Thanks in significant part to the residents who made their voices heard and the response of the planners involved. But I am strongly opposed to the high-density plan for one specific area known as Donnell Plaza. The city sees it as an eyesore for dense development. The city sees it as an eyesore ripe for dense development. That is understandable. It is run down and underused, but that is why this space offers Tempe a fantastic opportunity to develop this area as a community center, which our neighborhood desperately needs. The concept should be commercial, with densities that facilitate a mom and pop above the shop approach. Restaurants, cafes, and neighborhood bars, small locally owned stores, perhaps restoration of the skateboard area, an art gallery like Mesa's oriented to local artists, space for impromptu outdoor concerts, green space, all of this would bring the place to life. Tempe needs to diversify its development portfolio and become a leader in development at a human scale. The city has lost that vision, and it's rushed to please developers in its wheelhouse, like Hugh Hallman and Charles Huell-Mantel. If the city would only look beyond the wealthy developers who court its business, it can find the investors and builders it needs. The key is to focus on what folks who live here want and need. This is a plea for the city to get back on track and serve the people who live here and not the special interests who seek to maximize profit. Consequences be damned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kendon Ving.
Kendon Young, almost. Pleasure to meet you all. Tempe resident for 32 years and your chair of the Sustainability and Resiliency Commission for the City of Tempe. First, I want to thank staff and council for all of the work that went into this general plan. It was the first time that we have gotten sustainability throughout a document, and we are incredibly happy for that initial effort. But removing 6 mixed-use locations is against Tempe's values of affordable housing, our 20-minute city goal, and sustainable development. Someone fact-check me here, but I believe our resting population rate is about 160 to 180,000, and during the day it grows to 240,000. So when we are removing our mixed use, we are causing that equivalent number of people to commute twice in and out of the city. The general plan is a tool for decision making. By removing this mixed use designations, we are stripping these items. We are taking away the option for us to make that decision later at that time and with community input on those specific developments. This is not a concern about development. The neighborhoods are not under attack. This is a perceived concern about traffic and transportation and a fear of how the look and feel of Tempe will change. We cannot let this be a battle between the need to be more, for those that need Tempe to be more accessible and with those that don't want Tempe to change. So instead of scrapping mixed use, I recommend 3 things. First, let's work to expand alternative transportation options to address the perceived concern around traffic. Even though most that will move here are emerging professionals and young people who own single occupancy vehicles at a much lower rate than previous generations, and they need affordable housing. The second is to double down on our creative capacities to find ways of financing affordable housing that are not external developers. We have to look, we can look at some emerging crowdfunding options in which Tempeans can participate in the funding of these developments, as well as inform the developments of the neighborhoods, or of these developments next to their neighborhoods. And the third and final recommendation is that we engage in a public dialogue on a design charrette that can help inform an acceptable image or an acceptable character image of these types of mixed-use developments that we so desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Dirtle? Ertley.
I'm not really prepared to talk, and I own on August 17th will be 41 years of the property at 821 South Maple, which is directly behind the Chick-fil-A, which it was behind the Burger King. I fought for years for all the problems of being behind a commercial property. Back when Chase approached us to be able to get access because they couldn't get people in and out as well as CVS. So we agreed to that. At that time, we asked if we could abandon that alley. Well, that wasn't made possible because Ms. Gitlis came, and she was actually the only person from the Maple Ash neighborhood who showed up. Hence, Chick-fil-A has been able to obtain that alley for $50 a year. Their employees park in that alley at all hours. Their car alarms go off.
You're losing me here. Is this getting to
I'm getting to it.
Okay.
So I think I've talked to Ryan over the years and Shauna, but Brett Batchelor, I got his permission to go ahead and read what he sent to Mr. Tamblevick on February 27th. The cultural resource area designation, which was derived from the 2001 post-World War II subdivision study, was developed by some Tempe historical preservation advisory group and was then incorporated into the Tempe General Plan of 2030. Regrettably, it was implemented by locking in the zoning that existed in 2003 and then applied inappropriately to the 6 blocks of Gage Addition, 4 of which face on Mill Avenue and or University Boulevard. We contend that University and Mill is the inner core of Tempe's urban core, and that with Tempe being landlocked and with the only way to grow being through increases in height and density, that the one place this would happen would be the southwest corner of University and Mill. Tempe then starts work on the urban core master plan and using CRA as the reason excluded the 6 blocks of Gage Addition being subzone 7. As we all know, the UCMP was never adopted and was put on an indefinite hold. Further complicating the issue is the erroneous contention that downtown Tempe extends from Rio Salado Boulevard to University Boulevard, which is the old 8th Street, when anyone at all familiar with Tempe knows that downtown has always gone from 1st Street to 10th Street. ASU will continue development of the old Tempe Center property to 10th Street. But those people who own property west of Mill and south of University can't do anything.
So in wrapping it up, because we've hit your 3 minutes, I don't want to miss the point you're trying to make. Is your issue with the use of the CRA?
Yes.
And is it in multiple districts or just this one specific area
Just
on
the
the plan?
Mill, just the Maple Ash to 10th Street.
So what you're asking is for staff in this process as it moves forward to take a hard look at that particular CRA
Yes,
designation and whether it's
to 10th
appropriate.
Street, and 70% of the property owners are non-owner occupants.
Okay. All right, so I understand what you were getting at, and we will certainly, that point's been made, and we'll certainly follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ephraim. Ephraim McLaughlin.
I like to say, first of all, kind of disappointed that we didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance in the beginning, because we have family members and neighbors who died and got their legs blown off and everything. All right, I'm gonna start with the 2050 plan. I like the changes that were done for the Broadway, Rural and Alameda, 85282 area, making higher density will cause, besides more traffic, it's going to cause the pipes that are in Tempe to break a lot faster, which means that you're going to have to, the city's going to have to raise taxes. And what also is going to happen is we're going to have more police officers because there's going to be more people, and then the quality of life for the citizens in Tempe is going to go down. Since they ever since they started raising the density in Tempe, quality of life has gone down. I don't know people that have lived here before they started raising the density, they could see the difference. I've been here all my life, 27 years, went to Broadmoor with the McCamey and McClintock, and it's not a safe place to be in Tempe anymore. If I didn't live, if I wasn't raised here, I don't think I would even come here. Another subject is the last, I think it was the 2040 plan. What I like to see change is they're trying to put bump outs, street diets in many as much neighborhoods as possible. This is another problem because you have emergency vehicles. They changed one place that was only 2 lanes, and they took out the middle lane. And now, sometimes if there's something being done to the road, there'll be traffic on both sides. And since they took that middle lane out, let's say if there's an emergency, how's the ambulance or fire truck going to get to help someone? And I'm not against trees, but I think they should be in parks I think we should have a way that actually benefits the society, where there could be fruits, nuts to feed homeless people. You know, we could have people get together and pick the fruit and stuff like that, because we are a growing city and we don't need to make the streets smaller. And I think that's about it.
Thank you very much for coming in. Martin Lynch.
My name is Martin Lynch, and I spend most of my time down at the state capitol. First of all, I've lived here probably longer than most people in this room have been alive. It was a small rural farming town, and now not so much. Then I graduated from ASU with a degree in engineering, worked in aerospace, and then got involved in the court system and litigation, and now I run a litigation firm and write statute down at the state capitol. So I just put this document together with a couple points because I just found out about this at the last minute, like a lot of people. One of the persons here mentioned homelessness as a concern, and so I want to try to amplify that because what I'm seeing on the national scale is we're dealing with people with cookie cutter solutions for all these different cities that is not in the best interest of the people. One of those is that you will own nothing and be happy. And so with the financial situation changing the way it is, with the US dollar no longer being a reserve currency, we could all be facing a totally different financial reality in a short period of time. A number of people could be added to those homeless rolls. So I don't know, this is a zoning commission primarily. Do we have provisions to put homeless people someplace? I don't know that. Just going quickly to item number 8 on the second page, homelessness, there is nothing to, if I come across homeless people, I walk up and down the alley, oh, there they are, and there's nothing out there to identify why these people are homeless. And if you don't know why they're homeless, there's no way that you can do anything to stop the treadmill of creating more homeless people. And so I don't see anything in the plan that addresses trying to understand what that is so we can take action to ameliorate that issue. And another one that's key is down here at number 9 is the law enforcement side of it. The gentleman before me said he did not feel safe. He thought that there was a problem with security, and I agree with that. When people are desperate, the problems are probably not going to get any better. And I talked to a Tempe police sergeant, and I asked him, I said, when you get a call for shoplifting, what do you do? And he says, well, we might show up, but we probably don't show up. And if we show up, we probably don't arrest them. And, you know, if you look at Portland, you look at San Francisco, okay, we are on the slippery slope to going there if the rule of law no longer exists. And so with that, I had to preserving the family and supporting the family, lowering property taxes, and so with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions, commissioners? Thank you very much. Liam Huggins.
Thank you. My name is Liam Huggins, and I've been a lifelong resident of Tempe, Arizona. I'd like to start off my talk with thanking all of those who have participated in this process. I know it's a long process, And it takes a lot of negotiating and bargaining, a lot of back and forth, and I really appreciate everyone's participation. And I also really appreciate the plan going forward on issues of sustainability and about expanding out biking paths and expanding out green paths. As a biker, a runner, a commuter, all around Tempe, I really appreciate that. To go into the bigger issues of land usage in here, I've heard a lot of talk about community character. The CRAs, I'm not really sure what they mean. I mean that quite literally as somebody who's grown up in virtually all neighborhoods of 85282, 85281. I've lived in a lot of single-family homes, a lot of townhouses, and what I see are cookie-cutter stucco houses that have rusted pipes and bugs and broken windows, but that's, of course, because I'm a renter, not a homeowner. It's fantastic that Tempe residents who have managed to buy their houses and live in them for decades have managed to turn them into nice, manicured reflections of themselves, but for many renters, they are often corporate or landlord-owned and not very well kept up with. I'm not really too ashamed to see small, old, dilapidated apartments and single-family homes get bulldozed down to newer, nicer developments that actually allow for more residents, the residents that will come. I think there isn't this idea that, you know, if we don't build it, they will not come. They will come. And also people have pointed out the discrepancy with this idea of the median income of a Tempe resident of being $70K. I'm a postgraduate from ASU. I just got my undergrad. I feel extremely lucky in the job that I have, extremely lucky, much more so than most of the people in my graduating class, but I still don't make $70K. So it's not a realistic representation, especially considering that many of the people coming here to fill in this increase in density are going to be younger students, post-college graduates. Also, I think there's a big concern with removing density increases from 85282. As somebody who grew up mainly in that area, I moved out of that area because it's underdeveloped. It is harsh to walk around in. There is little shade, there is little to do, and it needs further development. And more density can only help that area, and actually I would say reduce traffic. You know, people are concerned about the cultural character. Well, then work with community business owners, work with places like Yucca Tap Room, Tops, Casey Moore's, and expand with them. Don't fight them. A lot of these people feel like they've been fought against by the city of Tempe, but if they worked with them, then they could develop with them. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much. All right, next I have, and I cannot make out the first name, maybe Cillian Harris? Definitely a Harris. There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please come up and correct me.
I'm moving kind of slow here.
That's all right, we got time.
For quite a while. I got a past from long ago. I came down into this valley in 1949 when the hotel was built under the underpass on Country Club, the first hotel with the swimming pool. I swam in that swimming pool on Christmas Day. We visited our aunt and uncle in California. I go back that far, but I went to school here. I came down here in '72. I worked for George Velasquez. George Velasquez and his firm advocated prior to that time, build trees, build green, build, because water keeps you going. We did in 1962 Indian country, an area you people completely overlooking, who could do you good, a lot of good. That the cycle of the land goes up and down and up and down. Who were your ancestors? Who were they? The Anasazi. Where are they? They're gone and spread all over because there was no water. There was no land, no farm, no engineering, nothing but water. Gone. There's so much going on now that there's going to be no water because they have a falsehood and everybody proving they have 100 years supply of water to carry their project, which is BS. You don't have 100 years. Our reservation is on 3 points of land that go to 3 different reservations flows of water, the Columbia, the Mississippi, and the Colorado. We have for 14 to 20 years been 20% below water range. We have no more icebergs. We have no more glaciers. We have no more water flow. You guys are trying to get things in here that consume water. We have the opportunity in Indian country again, just like we did in gaming. When they said we couldn't game, we can. We do. We're one of the biggest gamers. And when the tribes tried to get the state of Arizona to use the money we wanted to use, 25 to 50% for education, they shot us down. So play the game like they play the game, deadly. If you're going to do anything, do it right. You gotta have water. You're not gonna have it. You're not gonna have water because the cycle now is on the low end. It'll be another 40 to 50 years before it comes up. 7 universities proved that for us by the tree rings of the trees. Mother Nature told us. And the things that are happening now are going to affect everything you do, because it's just listening to this, and I've been in many states all over the country about it. I can compare a lot of things that are happening, and they're going to bite you in the butt. And one of them is trust deeds, because of the way that the financing takes place for all of this stuff in this country and in California and elsewhere. And the gentleman from the state downtown is both right and wrong. He can't get them to move to do the right thing, even though he might know the right thing to do, because we got a problem between politics. And I'm glad that Arizona is a liberal, Tempe is a liberal in a state of idiots, I guess is the best way I can put it. So you can all understand, folks.
All right. I appreciate it. We got to wrap it up.
I got one thing, last thing.
Quickly.
In '85, we tried to build a home for low-income people, a park and all that stuff on those 25 acres, and we were squashed by the law. County commissioner says you can't. We tried to build the community football stadium on the other side of the river in Indian country with help. They said no. We tried to build it out on the land where the gaming casinos, and they said no. It's idiot. You're not using the people. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate it. So water. Watch out for the water. Marion Durham. Marion Durham. All right, Jason Knorr.
Hi, my name is Jason Knorr. I'm a resident here in Tempe, actually 3rd generation resident and probably last generation resident. The city is not affordable. I doubt that I will ever be able to purchase a home, so props to the many homeowners in the room who are concerned about their property values, but is not something that I am considering at this time. More than likely, I will have to join my sister and many other people that I know that have to either live in further out suburbs or leave the valley entirely. And I do like this place. I really do like Tempe. I think it has a lot of value. But these changes to the 2050 general plan, I think, are to the detriment of the future of this city. Multi-family housing and mixed-use space in Tempe is the future, and it really is what's going to make this city continue to exist into the future. We talked a lot about affordability, I'm sure, throughout the night, so I'm not going to touch on how multifamily housing makes things more affordable for everyone, but it makes the city better. It adds to our resources. It creates more dense commercial availability. It creates more spaces for people to enjoy. It adds trees to our sidewalks so you don't have to be in the sun all the time. It allows people to walk around. I really think that tonight you should vote no to the amendments, keep them as they are, have that mixed-use space. I would be an advocate for expanding that, and I wish that's what I was here tonight to say. I wish I was here to tell you to raise the number of dwelling units per acre on all single-family homes in Tempe, but unfortunately, I'm here trying to hold on to the few improvements that you guys are planning on making. So, I don't know. That's what's sticking with me. I don't think Tempe is affordable. I think it will be less affordable if we don't make these changes. And just think about that as you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one additional card before me. So if you are not Kent Ertl and you wish to be heard, now would be the time to grab a white card and get that in so that we call on you.
There's another one.
No.
We're good.
That's it. Come on up.
All right. Well, I was going to ask ChatGPT what they actually say here, but I thought that might go a little bit long. But so I'm in the electronics industry, and I did want to make a comment that was, I'd like to echo what I heard earlier from someone else. I can't recall who, but they were in the software industry, and they work with professionals. And cities are built of professionals. They're usually very productive people, and you build cities to attract professionals. And the reason you do that, I believe, is to attract creativity. Productivity, you get, in return for that, you get great productivity gains. You build a very vibrant city, you get services for that, attract businesses, they come in, you improve that. How do you get that? You get that by density. And you can't get that by having a non-affordable city. And I can give you an example of what I see in our industry, and I'm in the electronics industry. And when I go up to San Jose, what I see is homeless people on the streets, and my engineers have to commute 2 hours into San Jose to find affordable housing. Now, these are not lowly paid engineers, but this is what happens to cities who build laterally and don't build up to build the density to support the productive labor that they're trying to attract. The very thing that major cities thrive on. And without people, you can't have a major city. Now, in that city, I walk into our offices now. They're empty. You have 25% of an office building that was built to house people, to work. Why are they empty? Because our employees say, why should I drive 2 hours each way and be away from my family, and then have to put in a 10-hour day? So that's 14 hours in a row. It's worse in Bangalore. And if you want to see traffic because you don't expand the city properly in a non-functional city and see how non-productive that is, you will build laterally and you will not expand. And that is the problem. So our major cities in Phoenix, we owe it to our economy here to take pride in that. It's really part of your duty to make sure that our economy thrives. Now, that's all I have to say, but I will defend our US dollar as a reserve currency because I heard that the US dollar is not a reserve currency, and I will challenge anyone here to trade in their US dollar for a yuan or a Pakistani dollar. And when you want to do that, then you could talk about the US currency not being a reserve currency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I felt there should have been some patriotic music playing in the background at that last. Pamela, come on up. You are our last contestant, unless I get another card. It's not too late.
Pamela Beal, Tempe. I have been here 49 years. Okay? We bought our house in 1975 out of cash to mortgage. We were both newly employed, $104 a week for my husband, a little bit more than that for me. We're in that same house. We've remodeled it, but we're in that same house. I was just in Iowa City, Iowa, and saw multi-use houses built there, commercial below, housing above, university used part of the buildings, other people did. It was great. They have economical stuff. It's a large university. I only see, somebody said ASU encroaching on downtown. It's being big. I think we need to look at what kind of high-density housing we have, not the 5-story, 4,000 unit complexes with 7 pools and gyms and jungle gyms that make you think you're in a resort. That's a building with 700 square feet, 1 bedroom or maybe 2 bedrooms. We can't have families in our town in 700 square feet at $1,700 a month sustained. We need a house above a grocery store or something that has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, that, 1,000, 1,200 square feet that a family can live in. You don't have to have swimming pools and jungle gyms and all that kind of stuff that these resorts are building over on Baseline and the 101 and things like that. We need real responsible, not resorts. We need housing. That's my biggest thing. I love to build. I think multi-use is good, though I like my house. I have lived in apartments before, but they weren't these gigantic luxury places. You don't need to go to, if you want to go to a staycation, go to Scottsdale. Your house doesn't need to be a staycation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that is the last card that I have before me. So unless I see somebody else standing up, raising their hand, I see none. We'll close the public comments portion of tonight's hearing. Now, just as a reminder, we're going to have staff come back up, and they may have some comments that they want to respond to that have come from the public commentary. We're not taking a vote tonight. We were here to listen. We're here to address concerns. We have another month before this panel will reconvene again and possibly actually take it to a vote. So in that period of time, I expect to see additional changes that will be published and will be put out to the public. You are all invited to come back on July 25th for our next hearing. And if you have additional things to say or additional comments on the new changes, assuming there will be, then come to that meeting. That will be at City Council Chambers, July 25th, 6 o'clock, downtown Tempe. So don't come back to this location. Ambika.
Thank you, Chair Domenico and commissioners. Just a couple of things. First of all, at the end of this, you can also give your advice and your guidance to us, and we'll take a note of this. Just a couple of things that had come, and you had asked us to make a note of some of the questions. The comments after we released the June 20th document draft, within the last 7 days, I think we received approximately 30 comments, some online, some by email, and we've got all of those compiled. There were a couple other questions that had come. One was about the median income. The median income, the area median income is calculated by actually federal government, and for the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale area, it's $88,000 for a family of 4 people. So that's how they calculate for the affordability of housing. It's not $70,000 per person. So that's an income that's kind of determined by the state and by the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and that's used for calculating the affordability of housing. So as of 2023, I think it's $88,800 for a family of 4. It's available online. Anyone who wants to check it. The couple other questions that had come was on the water resources. Of course, this is something we take it very seriously, and we take it to all our engineers, people who work on it. And I don't want to repeat what I said before, but this is something we always confirm before making any projections for growth or anything at all. And the projections for growth is not something that we make or we invite growth. It's something that the Maricopa Association of the Government does for all of us. And they base it on how many people are coming. Typically about 6 people in average permanently move to Tempe, and about 200 people in average permanently move to the county. So this is what they look at it, but it can change, like the population density last time got changed, and they revise it all the time. So it's a projection at this point of time. It might be different next year, but right now the projection is about 70,000 additional people between 2020 and 2050 for 30 years. And on the water resources, again, the water engineers have told us that after this plan is done, there will be a water resources master plan that will be updated. And that's what happens after the general plan is done. There are some indications in the land use map. They look at it and they do a projection again. But the last water resources master plan was 2021, so it's pretty much up to date. So water is something in the desert. There's an intuition that we need to conserve and all that, but we do International Green Construction Code. We have water conservation, very high level, sophisticated gadgets and faucets. So that's something that the city and everyone takes very seriously. So water is something that is pretty much done. The community working group, which I think I mentioned to say in advance, but in the staff report you saw it, I had voted to advance it to the DRC by a vote of 9-6, and some of the community working group members spoke about it. And then one more thing that I wanted to quickly kind of in response to some of the questions that people had put was, obviously the general plan density and land use is like to guide any new development in a proper place. They have to come, they have to go through a whole, if they need to a rezoning, or if they do any entitlement. So general plan is not a master plan, it's not a specific plan, it doesn't build, it only gives you a guidance. And the good idea of providing areas for good density is when people come and want to make an application, there will be the path of least resistance. They don't have to do the general plan amendment. That's what this document is trying to do. If there are any further questions by the commission to the staff, we are all here. Otherwise, we also like to hear from you and guidance so that we continue to build on this. And then the next time, before the 25th of July meeting, we'll send you a revised version 1 week in advance.
I imagine we'll provide, before we adjourn tonight, some guidance or some points for the next meeting for further research. But I'd ask the commission at this point, any specific questions for staff before we get to suggestions? All right, thank you very much. I'll start it off. This is a technical one. On page 280, I don't know why this caught my eye, but it's an exhibit that shows public service locations throughout the city, and we're missing fire station number 7 at McClintock and Warner is not shown on the exhibit. A couple of things I've heard from tonight's public comments that I'd like for us to address in July at the next meeting. A lot of this came from comments both tonight as well as some of the online comments that we saw. Danelle Plaza seems to be an area of concern for quite a few people, and primarily the loss of cultural resource that currently exists there, everything from the arts to the music side of things. I'd like a little bit more discussion about that specific site and the changes that are envisioned for that. We talked, a lot of people expressed concerns about Broadway Southern and even Baseline and the removal of previously suggested higher density to those transportation corridors. Now, again, not served by light rail or any of the hard infrastructure we've added, but significant bus lines serve those areas. I'd be interested to hear staff tell us a little bit about what transportation improvements would need to be made in order to support higher density on those 3 specific streets. And another point would be just to give us a general lead with an explanation of the CRA designation, what really goes into that in the different areas that have been so designated around the city. And then lastly, a few questions came up about homelessness. How does the 2050 plan, and 2050 is an aspirational document. It's what we want to be, but certainly how we interact and solve homelessness issues is a big part of what the city does on many levels. And I'd like to hear how it's incorporated into this planning document. Commissioners, other comments? Commissioner Cassano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You touched on it briefly, and a number of people here mentioned it. It's the CRA, the Cultural Resources Area. I think there needs to be a little more clarification. I'm not sure how it's exactly explained, but there seems to be some confusion as to what that is or where it came from or why we have it designated that way and what it is actually designed to do. So I'd like to see that clarified.
Others? Well, Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah, another area that stood out for me was just understanding better the sustainability language and ability of the general plan to codify that or not.
Vice Chair.
Thanks for saying that. That's one of the things I was going to mention. Yeah, is there a way to build in more concrete language? Is that appropriate for this type of document related to sustainability? Also, a little more clarity, which I think you mentioned earlier that you're looking into this, but the mixed use with the 25 dwelling unit per acre designation, a little more explanation related to that, if that is something that you're bringing forward or is appropriate. And then also understanding a little bit better, again, you mentioned this before, but the designation of leaving things commercial versus having them mixed use. And you did, I believe I heard you say that there is the potential element for housing on commercial, but I'd like to understand that a little bit better. And then someone mentioned that, and I don't know how this is calculated or if this is something that can be calculated, but that the projected land use in this document only allows for the addition of 20,000 people versus the projected 70,000 people. If there's a way to measure that or to at least consider that and think about if that's accurate or if we can just get a little more clarity on that aspect. And that's all I have.
To kind of round that out, at the next hearing, we'll speak to two things, both the number of housing units that we anticipate adding and what percentage of that 71,000 are housed within the units. So it's units and people. Thank you. We'll just go straight down the line.
Thank you, Chair. So unfortunately, I won't be at the July meeting where we vote, so I do want to just make a couple comments. I'll be succinct about it, but first I just want to say that I'm very proud of everybody who came out tonight to participate in this process. I agree with you that everyone came well prepared to speak their points, so I appreciate that. Also appreciate staff's hard work on this. And as Ambika mentioned, it's a challenge to find that balance between, differing opinions and needs and demands of the community. So in my opinion, I think moderation is always good, right? And so I understand that in our plan we have areas designated for high density and especially down in the urban core area. I did like the approach of spreading some of that density out in our major arterials where we had the mixed use along Broadway, Southern. I think those are, thoroughfares that can handle a bit more density and we can better use some of the sites that are along those roads. And as people mentioned in the crowd, not everybody wants to live in downtown Tempe. And also building high rises doesn't equate to affordability because they're amenitized greatly, they cost more to build, the land price basis is always higher. So more units in higher density doesn't necessarily equate to affordability. So I would like to potentially see revisiting that mixed use concept along some of our larger arterial streets. And then just as a matter of note, again, on the land use map, I don't love calling it no cap on the density. I think that kind of sets unrealistic and unsustainable expectations of potential developers. But I do love the fact that we are focusing on climate effects, climate change, adding more shade to our developments. And as a biker, I also appreciate the bike path. So I just wanted to note all of that for the record, and thank you.
Commissioner Spears.
One of the things that concerns me is changing the mixed use and density maps based on information received after the committee has approved what was coming forward. And so what I'd like to have is something, what was the basis for making that change? I heard a majority of people today say that they really liked it. So, you know, if you had 1,000 people that wanted it changed, if you can just kind of give us some background information on that. In terms of homeless, and this is kind of information, and affordability, the state legislature controls to a large extent what cities can do. And I don't know if there's a way that we can kind of work around that, or not work around it, but include language to effect that, you know, our hands are tied in a lot of the things that relate to affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, requiring payment into a fund, those kinds of things that might impact it. And I have concerns about CRAs. I think we all believe our neighborhoods are special. However, that may not be in the best interest of the long-term future of the city. Thank you.
Commissioner Forte.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of things that I wanted to say already has been stated on the panel. I am interested in learning why the density was stripped out in some of those areas, and also some concerns about the CRA, what goes into a neighborhood designating that. You know, I live in the Palmer District and Baseline and rural, and we don't have a neighborhood association, or is that all it takes is a loud neighbor to say, I want a CRA? So I'd just be interested in learning more about those. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other thoughts? Okay, well, that will conclude our discussion of item number 5. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan.
Chair DiDomenico, would you like me to maybe respond to the CRA topic, and we can certainly explore it and get into it further at the second hearing?
Certainly.
The cultural resource area designation came about in the 2030 general plan with some of the Historic Preservation Commission members and participants. For the longest time, we've had a smaller area within Tempe that was identified a very unique density designation in Maple Ash specifically. It was the only area in the city of Tempe that had this unique density designation. The reason why it's unique is because there's a lot of single-family properties as well as some multifamily units in there, but historically single-family properties that over time the city or new zoning ordinances changed some of the underlying zoning standards of the properties in those areas. And so you had in the 60s and 70s some zoning changes that brought in multifamily in those areas, increased density. So the concern was for some of those residents that want to see the neighborhood preserved is that those density designations encourage potentially redevelopment or tearing down some of those historic characteristics in those neighborhoods. So the idea came up of the cultural resource area designation is in terms of just identifying, instead of identifying those neighborhoods in some of those general ranges of categories, was we identified, based on the post-World War II subdivision study, which identified 25 unique post-World War II subdivisions, and identified those areas and neighborhoods that had some unique characteristics to Tempe in terms of qualities of those subdivisions, and to identify them on the map as the underlying zoning is as the most appropriate from a density perspective. So it was solely intended to identify it as density ranges with the map. Nothing else than that. I know there has been some comments or idea suggestions that maybe cultural resource area is something more beyond that, but it was used in terms of the land use map as a density tool. So you have those unique areas where you have single family homes with some multifamily property zoning designations. It's difficult to equate or identify what, we don't want to say the appropriate density is this range when it could result in upzoning of the areas. And in fact, some of those neighborhoods have requested to downzone their property so they could maintain the lower density characteristics in those neighborhoods. Over when the General Plan 2040 came out, we did have one additional neighborhood that asked and made some justification to be part of that cultural resource area designation. That was the Victory Acres neighborhood east of the 101. So they were added to that area. But it wasn't until this year or this process now that we're starting to see a lot of additional requests for cultural resource area designation. There have been some evaluations that we've identified on the plans that identified some homes, older homes in the late 50s to the early 1960s that made some sense or arguments to being in that post-World War II subdivision era. And so that's what we're carefully going through and looking at evaluating some of those neighborhoods that have been requested.
Thank you.
Chair?
Ambika.
Can I just respond to just a couple of things that have come up very quickly? One was on the language and codification. Obviously, a general plan cannot codify the language. It has to be regulatory in the zoning ordinance. But some of the things we can definitely strengthen the language. Still, it has to remain flexible and it has to be a little high level. So whatever we've heard, we'll continue to take that into consideration. Actually, between the May 5th and the June 20th, we've already made some language a little more stronger, but we can kind of rewrite that with some creativity, I suppose. The other question was, somebody had mentioned the 20,000 additional residents. There might have been some confusion because in the beginning we got a MAC projection and then we got a revised MAC projection. We used the last MAC projection that we got, and right now the projection is about 70,000 people between 2020 and 2050. So that's what we've been using. If somebody thought about 20,000, it probably, I don't know, some information, some here and there. And then we've asked for the dwelling units, which we will do. We typically use what the census gives us, which I think is 2.27 persons per household. So, you know, for 70, it will be something like 28,000 or something like dwelling units. And we have some documentations out here. And then there are a couple other just curiosities. One was, so every time that we produce, it's still a draft. So why did we make some of the changes between May 5th and June 20th? We actually held a lot of meetings, and at that time there was really a lot of pushback on us from the area residents, and we wanted to respect their perspective, people who live nearby some of those arterial intersections. And we thought, well, just putting a mixed use there itself doesn't guarantee anything. We like mixed use as a planner. Mixed use are, people talk about smart growth. Smart growth is a little higher density and mixed use all the time, so that people can work upstairs and go downstairs and then, you know, reduce the number of car trips that like people talked about. So that was the initial intention, but now if we add the mixed use 25, maybe those are some of the things that we can probably contemplate, and it would be like to your pleasure on which way you want to do that. But just because we held like 6 or 7 meetings, and a vast majority of the people say, take out those densities from here, leave the initial original commercial land use designation as shown in the 2040. So that's what we honor. We honor what people told us at those 5 or 6 meetings. But the commercial also does allow with a use permit, residential. As planners, we prefer mixed use, but it's, if someone really comes for a development, they go through a process, they can even do a general plan amendment. Those were some of the main things that you had asked, and we will, everything that you gave us in terms of guidance, we'll take that and anything that we hear, and we'll continue to get the input, and we'll work on a revised draft. Anything else we need to add? Thank you so much, Chair.
Good. Brian, if, so some of the things we normally would have handled in study session, any city council updates that we need to know about? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot there.
None at this time. We've
Okay.
actually will have a month hiatus until we have our next city council meeting in July.
And it's probably premature to talk about anything else we know will be on our next agenda being a month away, but other than this issue.
Yeah, and we've actually are attempting to try to make sure that the agenda is light so that we can focus on the core of the agenda for that night, which is a recommendation by the commission on the general plan.
Just for staff's purposes, I would, even if this is, if the general plan is the only item on the agenda, I think I would still like to have a study session when we're, for that meeting, only because there may be some other transitional stuff to talk about. Commissioners, any announcements? Anyone have anything you want to share? Any anniversaries? Any, no? I won't put you on the spot then. All right, well, thank you very much for participating. It means a lot when you come and tell us what you're thinking. It's very helpful. Good night.